Please, just tell me what exactly is related to this. I need to know the truth now.
It's difficult. There are things you need to understand about what happened.
Welcome to African Tales by Natasha. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and share it with your friends, and most important thing, turn your notification bell so you can get informed when I dropped another amazing story. Drop your thoughts and reactions in the comments. What would you do if your spouse tried to kill you and you survive? Will you take a revenge or disappear the glass shattered against marble flooring? Robert Harrison's body convulsed one final time before going still. In his study, surrounded by wealth he'd built over decades, the real estate mogul died alone, poisoned by his own daughter. 300 miles away, in a dark Indianapolis warehouse, Maya clutched her 2-year-old son Daniel as masked men circled them. Her mother's muffled sobs echoed through the cold space. They had no idea Robert was already gone. This is how empires fall. Not with market crashes or hostile takeovers, but with family betrayal, greed, and a mother's desperate love for her child. If you haven't watched parts 1 through 4, stop now. Go back. You'll need every piece of this puzzle to understand what happens next. Forever. For one whole year, the Harrison mansion in Chicago's Gold Coast knew peace. Robert Harrison, now 78 and confined to his wheelchair, spent his days differently than before. Little Daniel was walking now, those wobbly, uncertain steps that fill parents with equal parts pride and panic. The toddler would grab onto furniture, laugh at everything, and every time that baby laughed, Robert felt warmth spread through his chest. Something he hadn't felt in years. Pure, simple joy. Maya would sit on the Persian rugs with them, rolling a ball back and forth, watching Daniel chase after it with tiny hands reaching out. In those moments, she forgot about the hell she'd survived. Forgot about the poisoning attempts, the death threats, the months of running across state lines. All that mattered was right here, her son, her family, her hard-won peace. But peace never lasts in a house built on secrets and blood. Robert's first mistake was authorizing the early release of Sophia from prison. He couldn't do it, couldn't bear the thought of his own daughter sitting in a cell while he lived in luxury. Every night he'd close his eyes and see her face, hear her voice begging forgiveness. Even though she tried to kill him, even though she'd accidentally poisoned her own sister in the process, she was still his blood. After 6 months, he made the call. He hired Chicago's best criminal defense attorneys, paid the right people, pulled the right strings. Just like that, Sophia walked free. But freedom didn't make her happy. It made her angrier. While Robert lived comfortably with his new son and new wife Patricia, Sophia, Emma, and Allison were struggling badly. Emma's influencer career had collapsed like a house of cards. Her followers had turned on her viciously. At first, they believed her lies about Maya being a gold digger and homewrecker. But then the truth leaked. Blogs picked up the real story about how Emma's own sister tried to poison their father, how the Harrison family was destroying itself from within. The comment sections became brutal battlegrounds. People called Emma a liar, a fraud, a clout chaser. Brands dropped her overnight. Her follower count plummeted from 2 million to barely 200,000. The worst part. She had no one to blame but herself. Sophia's life spiraled even darker. Kenneth, the boyfriend who'd manipulated her into attempting murder, abandoned her the moment she lost everything. He'd been with her for the money, the inheritance, the lifestyle. When she had nothing, he disappeared, blocked her number, moved on to another woman with a wealthier family. That broke something fundamental inside Sophia. She started using drugs, first prescription pills to sleep, then harder substances to forget, then anything to feel something other than crushing failure and regret. She became a ghost of who she'd been. Hollow. Empty. Lost. But the one who hated Maya most was Allison. While her sisters fell apart, Allison remained focused, calculating, cold. She spent every day imagining different ways to kill Maya. Slow ways, painful ways, methods that would make her suffer before dying. Allison didn't care about money anymore. She didn't care about the mansion or inheritance. All she cared about was revenge. And Patricia. Patricia finally understood what she'd lost. For 30 years, she'd been Mrs. Patricia Harrison, wife of one of Chicago's wealthiest real estate developers. People respected her, feared her, envied her. She'd lived in luxury without questioning where it came from. The penthouse apartments, the jewelry, the properties scattered across 3 states, the lifestyle. She thought it was hers, that she'd earned it simply by being his wife. But the moment Robert sent her away, her income dried up completely. The businesses were in his name. The accounts were in his name. The properties were in his name. Without him, she was nothing. Just another middle-aged woman in Chicago with expensive taste and no money to fund it. It humbled her. Or at least made her pretend to be humbled. After 1 year of poverty and humiliation, Patricia gathered her daughters in her small rental apartment. "We need to go back," she announced. "Go back." Emma looked up from her phone where she was deleting hate comments. "Mom, he'll never take us back." "He will," Patricia said firmly. "Because he's a man, and men are weak when it comes to family. We just need to beg, cry, apologize, make him believe we've changed." "And then what?" Allison asked, her eyes sharp and focused. Patricia smiled. A cold, dangerous smile. "Then we finish what we started." So they began their campaign, targeting Jonathan Harrison, Robert's younger brother and the one man who still had his ear. Jonathan's phone rang constantly. Patricia would cry, her voice breaking as she begged for another chance. "We've learned our lesson. We were blinded by jealousy and anger. But we're ready to change. Please, Jonathan. Please talk to your brother. We're still family." Sophia would call next, sobbing about how much she regretted everything. "I was manipulated by Kenneth. I wasn't thinking straight. But I've changed. I swear. I just want my father to forgive me." Emma sent long text messages about missing her father, about being sorry for lying on social media, about wanting to rebuild their relationship. And Allison. Allison played the quiet, obedient daughter. "I just want to come home, Uncle Jonathan. I miss my father. I promise I won't cause trouble." 4 months. Jonathan resisted. He knew his brother's family, knew how dangerous they could be, knew that forgiveness might be a deadly mistake. But slowly, their words worked on him. Even Jonathan wanted to believe people could change, that family could heal. After 6 months of relentless pressure, Jonathan finally approached his brother. "They've been calling me every day," Jonathan said, sitting across from Robert in his study. "Crying, apologizing, begging for another chance." Robert looked tired, older than his 78 years. "And you believe them?" Jonathan hesitated. I think they've learned their lesson. A year is a long time to suffer. Maybe they have changed." Robert shook his head slowly. "People like Patricia don't change, Jonathan. They adapt. They wait. They plan. But they're still your family," Jonathan pressed. "Still your daughters. And as much as you love Maya and Daniel, you can't erase the past. You can't pretend your other daughters don't exist. What kind of man bans his own children forever?" That hit Robert hard because it was true. No matter what they'd done, they were still his blood, still his daughters. The guilt of keeping them away ate at him daily. So he did something he shouldn't have done. He asked Maya. "They want to come back," Robert said to her one evening as they sat in the living room. Daniel was already asleep upstairs. "My wife, my daughters. Jonathan thinks they've changed." Maya felt her stomach drop. "Do you think they've changed?" Robert was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I don't know. But Jonathan's right. They're still my family, and I can't keep them away forever." Maya wanted to scream, wanted to remind him these were the same people who'd tried to kill him, who'd hunted her across state lines, who would have murdered her son given the chance. But she also knew Robert was tired of fighting, tired of guilt, tired of being the villain in his own family's story. So she made a painful decision. "If they come back," Maya said slowly, "Daniel has to leave." Robert looked shocked. "What?" "I won't let my son stay in the same house as those women," Maya said firmly. If you bring them back, Daniel goes to stay with my mother in Indianapolis. Somewhere safe. Somewhere far from here. Robert wanted to argue but couldn't. Deep down, he knew she was right. Okay, he said quietly. Okay. But Maya wasn't done. And one more thing. If I'm going to stay in this house with them, if I'm going to face them every day, then I need to be your wife. Not your employee, not your baby's mother. Your wife. Officially. Robert stared at her for a moment. Then slowly, a smile spread across his face. Is that a proposal? Maya smiled back, tears filling her eyes. Maybe. 2 weeks later, they had a quiet, private wedding. No elaborate ceremony, no guest list of hundreds. Just Robert, Maya, Jonathan, and a minister at a small chapel in downtown Chicago. They signed the papers, exchanged simple rings, and just like that, Maya became Mrs. Maya Harrison. The ring on her finger felt heavy with meaning. She was no longer the maid who'd fulfilled a dying wish. She was the legitimate wife of one of Chicago's wealthiest men. And then, with a heart that felt like it was being torn in half, Maya packed Daniel's clothes and sent him to Indianapolis to live with her mother. She kissed his forehead, held him close and whispered, "This is just for a while, my baby. Just until it's safe. Mama will come get you soon." Daniel didn't understand. He just smiled and reached for her face with tiny hands. When the car drove away with her son inside, Maya stood in the circular driveway and cried. But she wiped her tears quickly. There was no time to be weak. Not when the wolves were about to return. A few days later, Robert made the call. "You can come home," he said to Patricia. "But if any of you causes trouble, if any of you touches Maya or disrespects her, you're out again. And this time it'll be permanent." Patricia agreed immediately. Too quickly, like she'd been waiting for this exact moment all year. When Patricia, Sophia, Emma, and Allison arrived at the mansion, they walked through the gates like they'd never left. But the moment Patricia saw Maya standing next to Robert, wearing a wedding ring, her jaw tightened. So he married her. Made it official. Made this nobody into Mrs. Harrison. But Patricia didn't say a word. She just smiled, a fake, empty smile. "Congratulations," she said through clenched teeth. Sophia threw her arms around her father, sobbing dramatically. "Daddy, I'm so sorry. I wasn't myself. I let the devil use me, but I've changed. I swear I'll never hurt you again." Emma did the same, crying and apologizing, promising to do better. And Allison just stood there quietly, head bowed, hands folded. "I just want to be a family again," she said softly. Robert believed them. Or at least he wanted to believe them. Because he loved them. Because they were his daughters. Because he was too tired to keep fighting. But Maya knew better. She looked at their faces, saw the fake smiles, the cold eyes, the carefully chosen words. And she knew this wasn't forgiveness. This was strategy. The war wasn't over. It had just entered a new phase. That evening, Jonathan called Robert one last time. "Brother, this is their final chance," Jonathan said, his voice firm. "1 year should be enough time for people to change. But if they do anything at all that looks suspicious or dangerous, you need to send them away permanently. No more second chances. Do you hear me?" Robert nodded, even though Jonathan couldn't see him through the phone. "I hear you. This is the last time." But even as he said the words, he wondered if he'd made a terrible mistake. Inside the mansion, Patricia was struggling. Struggling to breathe in a house that no longer felt like hers. Struggling to talk to a husband who looked at her like she was a stranger. Struggling to accept that Maya, that woman from Indianapolis, had completely replaced her. Every morning, Patricia would wake up and see Maya walking around the house like she owned it. Wearing expensive clothes Patricia used to wear. Sitting in the seat at the dining table that used to be hers. Sleeping in the bedroom that used to be hers. With the man that used to be hers. And it burned. It burned so badly that some nights Patricia couldn't sleep. She'd just lie in her guest room, staring at the ceiling, imagining all the ways she could destroy Maya. But the thing that confused her most was Daniel. Where was the boy? She'd expected to see Robert's precious son running around the house, but there was no sign of him. No toys, no baby clothes, no sounds of a child crying or laughing. "Where is your son?" Patricia asked Maya one morning, trying to sound casual. Maya looked up from her tea and smiled. A calm, knowing smile. "Somewhere safe. Somewhere you'll never find him." Patricia's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. She just walked away, her mind already working. As soon as Robert started giving her money again, small monthly allowances to keep her comfortable, Patricia began using it for something else. Something darker. This time, she didn't tell Allison. Didn't tell anyone. She worked alone, quietly, carefully. She hired men, different men from the ones she'd used before. Men who knew how to stay invisible, how to track people without being noticed. And she gave them one job: find Maya's mother. Find Daniel Harrison. Find them in Indianapolis. Meanwhile, Sophia was falling apart completely. She was always high now. Pills, alcohol, cocaine, whatever she could get her hands on. Anything to numb the pain of knowing she'd lost everything. And her father was still alive, still thriving, still playing happy family with Maya. She'd stumble around the mansion with glassy eyes and slow movements, barely speaking to anyone, barely eating, barely living. One afternoon, Robert rolled his wheelchair into her room and found her lying on the bed, staring at the ceiling, an empty pill bottle on the nightstand. "Sophia," he said softly, "what happened to you? You were never like this." Sophia turned her head slowly and looked at him. Her eyes were empty. Hollow. "Thanks for bringing us back, Daddy. Really. But just leave me alone. Please." Robert felt something crack inside his chest. This was his daughter, his firstborn daughter, and he didn't even recognize her anymore. He rolled his wheelchair out and went straight to Maya. "Sophia's not okay. She needs help. Maybe you can talk to her. Woman to woman." Maya looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. "I'll try." But before she could, Emma started running her mouth again. She'd been quiet for a while, trying to lay low after the public humiliation. But the moment she moved back into the mansion, the moment she felt money in her hands again, her ego returned. She started posting on Instagram, pictures of the mansion, pictures of expensive meals, captions like, "Back where I belong," and "Never count me out." She even visited friends' houses and started bragging about how she'd reconciled with her parents, how everything was fine now, how she was still rich and unbothered. And then she made her biggest mistake. She went on Instagram Live and started mocking her former fans, the same people who'd supported her, defended her, believed her lies. "You people thought I was finished, right?" Emma said, laughing into the camera. "You thought I lost everything. Please. I'm a Harrison. I'll always bounce back, unlike some of you who have nothing but your phones and your opinions." The comments section exploded. People were furious. They called her arrogant, delusional, out of touch. And just like that, the few followers she had left started unfollowing her again. Even her friends stopped inviting her to events. Nobody wanted to be associated with her anymore. But Emma didn't care. She was back in the mansion. She had money again. That was all that mattered. Allison, on the other hand, was confused. Her mother was acting strange, distant, secretive. Before, Patricia used to tell Allison everything. They'd planned together, schemed together, moved together. But now Patricia barely talked to her. She was always on her phone, always locking her door, always whispering to people Allison didn't know. It hurt. Allison started spending more time alone in her room, wondering what she'd done wrong, wondering why her mother was pushing her away. But one night, everything became clear. Patricia was walking toward Robert's room. She'd been drinking, not much, just enough to give her courage. She wanted to try one more time. Maybe if she went to him, reminded him of the 30 years they'd spent together, reminded him of the daughters they'd raised together. Maybe he would soften. Maybe he'd let her back in. But as she got closer to the door, she heard something that stopped her in her tracks. Laughter. Robert was laughing. Really laughing. The kind of deep, genuine laughter she hadn't heard from him in years. And then she heard another voice. Maya's voice. Soft and warm and playful. They were talking, joking, enjoying each other like a real couple. Like Patricia had never existed. Patricia's hand touched the door, and she stood there frozen. Tears started rolling down her face. Not sad tears, angry tears. Bitter, burning tears that tasted like poison. And from down the hallway, Allison saw her. Saw her mother standing at that door, crying, broken, defeated. In that moment, Allison understood. Her mother wasn't distant because she was angry. She was distant because she was hurting. Because Maya had taken everything from her. Her husband, her home, her place in the world. That night, Allison went to her mother's room and found her sitting on the bed, staring at nothing. "Mom," Allison said quietly. "I'm ready. Whatever you need me to do, I'm ready." Patricia looked up at her daughter, and for the first time in a long time, she smiled. A real smile. Because she wasn't alone anymore. "Good," Patricia said, wiping her tears. "Because I have a plan." The next morning, Patricia increased the payment for her hired men. She told them to work faster, to find Maya's mother and Daniel no matter what it took. And 3 days later, they called her with good news. "We found them," one of the men said over the phone. Meridian Hills neighborhood in Indianapolis. The woman drives a black SUV, takes the boy to preschool every morning. Same route. Same time. Patricia's eyes lit up. "Perfect. I want you to follow them, learn their routine. And when they're coming back from school tomorrow, I want you to block the road. Take the boy. Take the woman. Bring them to me." "What if the security guards resist?" the man asked. "Then deal with them," Patricia said coldly. "I don't care how you do it. Just get me that child." The next day, Maya's mother drove Daniel to preschool like she did every morning. He was 2 years old now, talking more, laughing more, growing so fast. She held his hand as they walked into the school, kissed his forehead, and watched him run toward his classroom with his little backpack bouncing. "See you later, baby," she called after him. A few hours later, she came back to pick him up. Daniel ran to her with a drawing he'd made. A messy scribble of colors he said was his family. Maya's mother smiled, held his hand, and walked back to the SUV where the security guards were waiting. They drove through the streets of Indianapolis, taking their usual route home. The sun was shining. The radio was playing. Everything felt normal. But then, as they turned onto a quieter street, a car suddenly pulled out in front of them. The driver slammed on the brakes, and the SUV screeched to a stop. Before anyone could react, 4 men jumped out of the car. They were wearing masks, holding weapons, moving fast. The guards tried to fight back, but they were outnumbered. One guard was hit in the head with a metal rod and collapsed. The other was dragged out of the car and thrown to the ground. Maya's mother screamed, pulling Daniel close to her chest, trying to shield him. But one of the men yanked the car door open and grabbed her by the arm. "Please," she begged, tears streaming down her face. "Please don't hurt him. He's just a baby." But they didn't listen. They pulled her out of the car, snatched Daniel from her arms, and shoved them both into the back of their vehicle. Daniel was crying, screaming for his grandmother. Maya's mother was screaming too, fighting against the hands that held her, trying to reach her grandson. And then the car door slammed shut. The engine roared. And they were gone. Back at the mansion in Chicago, Maya was folding laundry when her phone rang. It was an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something told her to pick up. "Hello, Mia." It was one of the guards, his voice shaking, panicked. "They took them. They took your mother and Daniel. We tried to stop them, but there were too many. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." The phone slipped from Maya's hand and hit the floor. Everything went silent. The world stopped spinning. All Maya could hear was the sound of her own heart breaking. Patricia didn't waste a single second. The moment her men confirmed they had Maya's mother and Daniel, she grabbed a burner phone, one that couldn't be traced back to her. She dialed one of the kidnappers and gave clear, precise instructions. Use a fresh number. Call Maya. Tell her to come alone to the warehouse in Indianapolis. Tell her if she tells anyone, if she brings police, if she tries anything smart, we'll kill the boy first. Let her hear him crying. Make it real. The man understood. 20 minutes later, Maya's phone rang again. Hello. Her voice was shaking, desperate. Listen carefully, the voice said, cold and emotionless. We have your mother. We have your son. If you want to see them alive again, you'll come to Indianapolis alone. I'll send you the address. If you tell anyone, if you bring police, the boy dies first. Do you understand? Please, Maya begged, her voice breaking. Please don't hurt him. He's just a baby. I'll do anything. Just don't hurt my son. In the background, she heard it. Daniel's voice. Crying. Screaming. Mama. Mama. Maya's knees buckled. She grabbed the edge of the table to stop herself from collapsing. I'm coming. I'm coming right now. Just please don't hurt him. The line went dead. Maya stood there for a moment, her mind racing. She should tell Robert. She should call the police. She should do something smart. But all she could hear was Daniel's voice. All she could see was his face. And the fear that gripped her throat made it impossible to think straight. She grabbed her bag, ran to the garage, and told the driver, "Take me to the airport. Now. We're going to Indianapolis." "Ma'am, should I inform Mr. Harrison?" the driver asked. "No," Maya said quickly. Too quickly. "Just drive." The driver hesitated but obeyed. Within hours, Maya was on a plane to Indianapolis. When she landed, a car was waiting for her with the address already programmed into the GPS. She got in without thinking, without questioning, without realizing she was walking straight into a trap. The car took her to a quiet, abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. The moment she stepped out, 3 men grabbed her. She tried to scream, tried to fight, but a cloth was pressed over her mouth, and everything went black. When she woke up, she was tied to a chair in a dark room. Her mother was across from her, also tied up, her face bruised and swollen. And in the corner, Daniel was sitting on the floor, crying softly, his tiny hands reaching out for her. "Mama," he whimpered. "Mama." Maya's heart shattered into a million pieces. Back in Chicago, Patricia and Allison were celebrating. They sat in Patricia's room with a bottle of expensive wine, glasses clinking, laughter echoing off the walls. For the first time in over a year, Patricia felt victorious. She'd won. Maya was trapped. Daniel was trapped. And Robert had no idea. "To finally getting rid of that woman," Patricia said, raising her glass. Allison smiled, a dark, twisted smile. "To finishing what we started." They drank late into the night, too drunk on revenge to notice the storm that was about to come. Meanwhile, Robert was starting to worry. He hadn't seen Maya all evening. He called for her, sent staff to check her room, but she was gone. Her phone was off. Her belongings were still there, but she was nowhere to be found. And then he realized something else. Daniel. He hadn't heard any updates about his son either. No calls from Maya's mother, no pictures, no messages. Nothing. Panic started creeping into his chest like cold water. "Find her," he told the staff. "Find Maya now." But no one knew where she was. The driver finally admitted he'd taken her to the airport hours ago, that she'd gone to Indianapolis. But why? And why alone? Robert felt his blood run cold. Something was wrong. Very, very wrong. He immediately called Jonathan. "They took her. They took Maya and my son. I know it. I know Patricia did this. Jonathan's voice cracked with guilt and anger. This is my fault. I convinced you to take them back. I thought they'd changed. I thought, God, I was so wrong. I need your help, Jonathan. Please. I can't lose them. I can't lose my son. I know, Jonathan said, his voice shaking. This is on me. But we'll fix this. Stay where you are. Don't do anything stupid. I'm coming over right now. We'll figure this out. But Robert couldn't stay calm. He rolled his wheelchair as fast as he could to Patricia's room and banged on the door. Open this door, he shouted. Open it now. Patricia opened the door slowly, her face blank, her eyes cold. Allison stood behind her, arms crossed, smirking. Where is Maya? Robert demanded, his voice shaking with rage. Where is my son? Patricia tilted her head, pretending to be confused. What are you talking about? Don't play games with me, Patricia. I know you did something. I know you took them. Took them, Patricia said, her voice dripping with fake innocence. Why would I do that? We just came back home. We're trying to rebuild this family. Why would we kidnap anyone? Allison nodded along, her face serious. Dad, maybe they just went somewhere. Maybe Maya needed space. You know how she is. Robert stared at them, his hands trembling. He wanted to believe them, wanted to think maybe he was overreacting. But he knew better. He knew these women. He knew what they were capable of. If anything happens to Maya or my son, Robert said, his voice low and dangerous, I will personally make sure every single one of you pays. Do you hear me? I will destroy you. He rolled his wheelchair away, calling for staff, for security, for anyone who could help him find his family. But Patricia and Allison just looked at each other and smiled. Later that night, while Robert was in his study with his assistant trying to figure out what to do, Sophia made her move. She was high, not just on cocaine this time, but on power. On the thrill of finally getting rid of the people who'd ruined her life. She felt invincible, untouchable. And in that state, she decided to finish what she'd started. She went to the kitchen, pulled out a small vial from her pocket, and poured it into the water cooler, the same cooler Robert drank from every single night. It was so easy. So simple. And no one saw her. An hour later, Robert was sitting in his study, exhausted, broken, barely holding himself together. He was thinking about Maya, about Daniel, about how he'd failed to protect them again. Sir, you need to drink something, his assistant said gently. You haven't had water all day. Robert nodded weakly. Get me a glass. The assistant went to the kitchen, filled a cup from the water cooler, and brought it back to the study. Robert took the glass with shaking hands and drank it all in one go. And then, seconds later, his throat closed. His eyes went wide with shock. He tried to speak, tried to call for help, but no sound came out. His body convulsed. The glass slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor. And then he fell out of his wheelchair and hit the ground with a heavy, final thud. The assistant screamed. Help! Somebody help! Staff came running. Patricia came running. Emma came running. They all stood there, staring at Robert Harrison lying on the floor, his eyes open but lifeless, his chest no longer moving. He was gone. The news spread like wildfire. Within hours, every media outlet in Illinois was reporting it. Robert Harrison, one of Chicago's wealthiest real estate developers, was dead. The mansion was flooded with phone calls, business partners, friends, extended family members. Everyone was calling, asking what happened, demanding answers. And Sophia was terrified. She'd thought it would be easy, that she could just blame the assistant, claim her father died from a heart attack after losing Maya. But the reaction was bigger than she expected. People were angry, suspicious. Robert's friends and relatives were already on their way to Chicago from different states, and they weren't coming to mourn. They were coming to investigate, to demand justice. Sophia's hands started shaking, not from grief, but from fear and from the cocaine still running through her system. She couldn't stay here. She had to run. So she grabbed the keys to one of her father's cars, threw a bag in the back seat, and drove straight to Kenneth's apartment. Kenneth opened the door and saw her standing there, eyes wide, makeup smudged, hands trembling. He knew immediately that something bad had happened. "Kenneth, please," Sophia said, her voice breaking. "I need somewhere to stay. Just for a little while. Please." Kenneth looked at her for a long moment. Then he smiled. Not a kind smile. A calculating smile. "Come in." He had no intention of protecting her. But he had every intention of using her. Back at the mansion, Patricia, Allison, and Emma were putting on a show. They cried. They wailed. They blamed the assistant for poisoning their father. They acted devastated, heartbroken, destroyed. And some people believed them. But not everyone. When Jonathan Harrison arrived at the mansion and saw his brother's body being carried out in a black bag, something inside him snapped. He looked at Patricia with eyes full of rage. "You did this. I don't know how, but I know you did this." Patricia wiped her fake tears. "How dare you accuse me? I just lost my husband." "You lost him the moment you decided to destroy him," Jonathan said coldly. "And I swear, I will make sure you pay for this." And somewhere in that Indianapolis warehouse, locked in darkness, Maya had no idea that the man who'd saved her life, who'd given her a son, who'd loved her when no one else did, was gone. Jonathan cried like a baby. He stood in the morgue, staring at his brother's body through the glass, and he couldn't hold it together anymore. His shoulders shook. His hands covered his face. The tears just kept coming. Because this was his fault. He'd convinced Robert to let those snakes back into his house. He'd pushed for forgiveness. He'd believed people could change. And now his brother was dead. "I'm sorry," Jonathan whispered through his sobs. "I'm so sorry, brother. This is on me. All of it." He made arrangements for the body to be kept in a private facility. No big funeral yet. Not until he found out the truth. Not until he made sure everyone responsible paid. For 4 days, Jonathan locked himself in a hotel room. He didn't answer calls. Didn't see anyone. He just sat there alone, weeping, blaming himself, replaying every conversation, every decision that led to this. But on the 5th day, something inside him changed. The grief turned into something else. Something colder, harder, more dangerous. He was done crying. Now it was time for justice. Meanwhile, Emma went live on Instagram again. She sat in front of the camera with red, swollen eyes, her voice shaking. "I lost my father, the greatest man I've ever known. And it was his assistant who killed him. That evil man poisoned him. The police have arrested him, and justice will be served." The comment section exploded, but not in the way Emma expected. "You're shameless. Your own sister tried to poison your father before. Why are you blaming the assistant? If I were Robert Harrison, I would never have let you back in my life. You're a liar and a fraud. Nobody believes you anymore." Emma read the comments, her jaw tightening, her hands shaking with anger. But she didn't stop. She kept the fake tears coming, kept playing the victim. Kenneth was getting tired of Sophia. At first, he thought maybe he could use her. Maybe she still had access to money or connections. But the moment he heard Robert was dead, his eyes lit up with a new plan. "Sophia, listen to me," Kenneth said, sitting next to her. "Your father just died, which means the will is about to be read. You need to go back to that house and claim your share before your mother and sisters take everything." Sophia looked at him with hollow, scared eyes. "I can't go back there, Kenneth. People are looking for me. They know I tried to kill him before. If I show up now, they'll arrest me." "Then you're going to lose everything," Kenneth said sharply. "Is that what you want? To sit here broke and useless while your family gets rich?" "I just need 1 more week," Sophia begged. "Please." Just let me stay here one more week. Then I'll figure it out. Kenneth sighed, annoyed, but nodded. He'd give her one more week. And if she didn't leave by then, he'd throw her out himself. Back at the mansion, Patricia and Allison were having a different conversation. We should just kill her, Allison said, pacing. Maya's useless now. Robert's dead. There's no reason to keep her alive. Patricia shook her head slowly, a twisted smile spreading across her face. No. I want to tell her first. I want to see her face when she finds out that the man who loved her, who protected her, who gave her everything, is gone. I want to watch her break. Allison stared at her mother, a chill running down her spine. Sometimes she forgot how cruel Patricia could be. Fine, Allison said. But after that, we get rid of her. And the boy. And her mother. All of them. Patricia nodded. All of them. But what they didn't know was that Jonathan was already moving. He wasn't the soft, forgiving man his brother was. Jonathan had spent years in business, in politics, in rooms where betrayal was currency and loyalty was rare. He knew how to play dirty. And he was about to show Patricia and her daughters what real power looked like. The next morning, Jonathan sent a text message to Allison. Simple. Direct. I need to show you what your father drafted in the will for you and your sisters. Meet me at the mansion tomorrow morning. Come alone. Allison's eyes lit up when she read the message. The will. Her inheritance. Finally. She didn't tell Patricia. Didn't tell Emma. She wanted to know her number first. Wanted to know exactly how much she was worth. The next day, Allison arrived at the mansion early. Jonathan was waiting for her upstairs in a private room. The door was closed. The curtains were drawn. Uncle Jonathan, Allison said, smiling as she walked in. Thank you for telling me. I've been so worried about what Dad left for us. Jonathan didn't smile back. He just stood there, his face cold, his hand behind his back. Sit down, Allison. She sat, still smiling, still clueless. And then Jonathan pulled out a gun, a silenced pistol, and pointed it directly at her face. Allison's smile vanished. Uncle Jonathan, what are you? Where is Maya? Jonathan said, his voice calm but deadly. Where is Daniel? I don't know what you're talking about. Jonathan pulled the trigger. The bullet fired into the ceiling, the sound muffled by the silencer, but the message was clear. Allison screamed, tears instantly streaming down her face. Okay. Please don't kill me. Where is Maya? Indianapolis. Allison sobbed. There's a warehouse in Indianapolis. That's where my mother is keeping them. Please, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Who killed my brother? Jonathan asked, his gun still pointed at her. I don't know, Allison said quickly. I swear. But I think it was Sophia. She's been missing since Dad died. And she tried to kill him before. It has to be her. Jonathan's jaw tightened. He lowered the gun, pulled out his phone, and made a call. I need a full team. Police. SWAT. Whatever you have. Send them to a warehouse in Indianapolis. Now. I'll send the exact coordinates. And I need another team at the mansion. We're arresting Patricia Harrison, Allison Harrison, and Emma Harrison. Charges: kidnapping, conspiracy to commit murder, and murder. He hung up and looked at Allison one last time. You're going to prison. And you're never coming out. Within the hour, police and tactical units stormed the warehouse in Indianapolis. They broke down the doors, arrested the kidnappers, and found Maya, her mother, and little Daniel tied up in a dark, cold room. Maya was weak, dehydrated, terrified. But when she saw the officers, when she realized she was being rescued, she collapsed in relief. My son, she whispered. Is my son okay? One of the officers untied Daniel and placed him in her arms. The boy clung to her, crying, shaking. But he was alive. They were both alive. At the mansion, more police arrived. They stormed through the gates and arrested Patricia, Allison, and Emma on the spot. The women screamed, protested, threatened lawsuits. But it didn't matter. The evidence was overwhelming. The testimonies were clear. They were guilty. Jonathan made sure they were sent to the harshest maximum security prison in Illinois, a place where rich women like them would learn what real suffering felt like. He also sent police to Kenneth's apartment. They found Sophia hiding there, high on cocaine, barely coherent. And when they searched Kenneth's laptop, they found evidence of internet fraud, stolen identities, scam operations. Kenneth wasn't just a bad boyfriend. He was a criminal. Both of them were arrested. Both of them were locked up. And neither of them would see freedom for a very, very long time. A week later, Jonathan went to the hospital where Maya was recovering. She was sitting up in bed, holding Daniel. Her mother was beside her. When she saw Jonathan walk in, she tensed. She didn't know if she could trust him. Didn't know what he wanted. Jonathan stopped at the foot of the bed, his eyes filled with guilt and sorrow. "Maya," he said quietly, "I owe you an apology. This is my fault. I told my brother to take them back. I thought they'd changed. I was wrong. And because of me, you suffered. Because of me, my brother is gone." Maya's eyes filled with tears. "He's gone." Jonathan nodded, his voice breaking. "Robert is dead. Sophia poisoned him. I'm so sorry." Maya broke down. She sobbed so hard her whole body shook. Her mother held her. Daniel clung to her. And Jonathan just stood there, letting her grieve. When she finally stopped crying, Jonathan spoke again. "But I promise you, Maya, everything will be fine from now on. Those women will never hurt you again. They'll rot in prison for the rest of their lives. And I will take care of you. I will take care of Daniel. I'll run the Harrison Real Estate Company until Daniel is old enough to take over his father's empire. That was my brother's plan, and I will honor it." Maya looked at him through her tears and nodded. "Thank you." "No," Jonathan said. "Thank you. For loving my brother. For giving him a son. For being the one good thing in his life when everyone else tried to destroy him." Years later, Daniel grew up strong, smart, and loved. Maya healed. Jonathan kept his promise. The Harrison Empire thrived under his management, waiting for Daniel to come of age. And somewhere in that maximum security prison in Illinois, Patricia, Sophia, Emma, and Allison learned that greed, jealousy, and cruelty always have a price. Robert Harrison was gone, but his son Daniel was alive and well. Maya finally got the peace she deserved. And those wicked women? They were rotting in prison where they belonged. Backhand index pointing up, and that's how the story ends. What a journey this has been. If you made it to the end of this 5-part saga, I want to know, what lesson did you learn from all this drama? Was it about greed? About family? About karma? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button right now. We have so many more stories like this coming your way. Stories with real emotions, real consequences, and real justice. Share this with your friends, your family, anyone who loves a good story. Because stories like this teach us that no matter how powerful evil seems, justice will always find its way. Thank you so much for watching this entire series. I'll see you in the next story. Backhand index pointing up.